I've been meditating almost every single day for these last 3.5 to 4 years. And I'll say it's completely changed my life. I think everybody should meditate every single day. However, there is such a thing as taking meditation way too far, especially if you're really not prepared at all to go that far into it. I got to a point within my own life where I was meditating for like 2.5, 3 hours a day. And that might not seem like anything too crazy, especially compared to these guys who meditate for 8, 12, 16 hours a day, but I was doing this within the first 2 or 3 months of actually starting. And what I realized was that I was having a difficult time functioning within society because I was just getting so deep within my inner world. Essentially, what happened was that all the realizations I came to made socialization and just doing those everyday tasks that are part of our life feel meaningless. And I just felt like an alien walking among people within the earth. I became so immersed with my inner world that the external world just simply wasn't enough. And that's when I knew, okay, maybe I gotta take a step back because things got pretty crazy. And this isn't to say that I was enlightened, because I am far from enlightened. I'm not saying that at all. I am not an actualized being. However, what I will say is that some of the insights I came to were pretty profound, and they made engaging with life itself just feel very strange. And I wasn't quite ready to come to the realizations that I came to. I wasn't emotionally and spiritually mature enough to embody them within my life. And this is all because I took meditation way too far, way too soon. So in today's video, I'll be talking about why this is a big problem, how you can go about meditating effectively with the time that you have and not overdoing it, and how you can actually integrate the things that you learn from meditation into your everyday life, all right? Let's begin. I really started getting into meditation after I graduated college and moved back in with my parents. It was just something that felt like I should be doing. I don't know what it was that got me to start. I don't remember exactly what led to this becoming a daily thing for me, especially something I did for 2.5, 3 hours, but that's how it was. And I thought, oh yeah, this is easy. I'll just sit here in a lotus position and just learn how to meditate. That's what I did, and I went so far. But the problem was that I was not ready to meditate for that long and that frequent, on a daily basis. You see, when somebody starts lifting weights at the gym, they don't start going every single day for 2 hours a day. They might go for 30 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week, because their body, their muscles are simply not used to lifting weights on a regular basis. And it turns out, as I learned the hard way, your mind works the same way. You see, in modern times, especially here in America, the Western world, we tend to think bigger is better. We have bigger portion sizes, we have bigger houses, you name it. But when it comes to meditation, that simply is not the case at all. Rather than meditating for 2.5, 3 hours like I found it's way more effective. You get so much more out of it when you can meditate for a normal amount of time. I'm saying anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes. When you can meditate for that amount of time, what you're doing is you're being mindful, you're focusing on the breath, and you're creating space between you and those thoughts. But when you haven't done that for an extended period of time, I'm saying at least 6 months or 12 months, and you instead just jump right into the deep end and try meditating for hours on end, then you're gonna come to some pretty crazy realizations that you're simply not ready to come to. And this happens a lot, especially if you're somebody who has a strong ability to focus and you're somebody who naturally is just akin to meditation. You see, I've always been great at focusing, and meditation just happened to come pretty easy to me. So what happened was I was essentially going so deep into meditation that I was dissolving the structures that made up my internal narrative. And I know that sounds crazy, but you see, humans, we are driven by stories. There are underlying narratives that essentially run our lives. These narrative structures within our reality provide a certain context to help us make sense of the world. And when we realize that those narrative structures aren't really anything, they're just abstractions, then it can really shatter your worldview. And if you're not ready for that, if you're just somebody who's just gone way too far, jumped into the deep end with meditation before you've worked your way up, then it's very difficult to go about your everyday life in the same way as what you did before. I thought I was becoming intelligent and perceptive and gaining this amazing cosmic awareness that I didn't have before, but in reality, I was actually moving closer towards derealization, which is a very strange thing to experience. If you've ever experienced something like plant medicine, or if you've gone really deep into meditation or out of body experiences, you know that it's a very strange thing. And essentially, the ego dissolves. And if you're not prepared for that, as I mentioned 3 other times before, then it makes coming back to this physical world seem very strange and very, I don't want to say pointless, but for lack of a better word, like pointless. And because I was psychologically and emotionally immature at that time and I hadn't developed a foundational identity of who I really was within this world, then I became a bit nihilistic, as I've talked about in plenty of other videos. But yeah, it turns out that this isn't anything new, because at that time I looked into it like, hey, why am I'm supposed to be doing something good, meditating for 2.5, 3 hours a day. Why am I feeling so weird within reality now that I've been doing this practice? And this really wasn't anything new. This phenomena had been talked about for generations. Buddhist teachers talked about this being the dark night, and Christian mystics talked about this being essentially a spiritual dissolution, where your sense of self within reality and the structures that make up who you are within this reality just kind of dissolve, because you realize that they don't have the same meaning as what they once did. We see this sort of weird feeling happen with the main character in the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I forget her name, but she gains this infinite perspective from essentially traveling dimensions, and her awareness just becomes so heightened to the point where she realizes that nothing matters. And I'm not here to say that nothing matters, but at the cosmic scale, this was the realization that she came to. And there's a scene in the movie where her and her daughter are like traveling through different dimensions, and it pans to this dimension where they are both rocks, and they're just sitting there as rocks. And basically the whole idea of that is they're just like, yeah, like, we're rocks, we're just here, we're simply existing. And I always thought that was really funny. A pretty similar thing happens to Edward Norton's character, the narrator from Fight Club. Essentially, Tyler Durden, his alter ego, dismantles every narrative that makes up who he thinks he is within this world. And he essentially, things get chaotic, things get crazy, and that is not a great way to go about handling that situation. But yeah, one could say this is liberating, but you could also say that this is terrifying. But the main thing with going into meditation is not going so deep to the point where you're going to come to realizations that you're just not ready to handle. That was me a number of years back. I realized some things that I just didn't feel like I was comfortable knowing or accepting within my own life. And obviously I did, and things worked out, and I'm okay, but I can see how going too deep into meditation too soon can kind of make you go a little bit crazy. Alan Watts has this great quote in one of his talks where he says, once you get the message, hang up the phone. In the context of meditation, what it means is that meditation isn't the objective. Meditation is not the point. It's simply a practice you can do to use your attention and your time and energy in an effective way. But when your entire lifestyle and identity revolves around being that guy or that girl who meditates, and you meditate all the damn time, then that essentially takes away from the beauty of it. That takes away from your enjoyment of life itself, because I truly don't believe, unless you're going to make this your lifestyle, I don't believe it's worth going all in, meditating for 2.5, 3 hours a day like I did before. You can think in your mind, yeah, I can get all these amazing benefits. I can live this amazing lifestyle if I meditate for all this time every day, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. Kind of like what Jeff Goldblum's character says in the first Jurassic Park movie. He says something like, yeah, well, you scientists were so interested in figuring out if you could make dinosaurs come back to life, but that doesn't mean you should. And the same thing applies here. Just because you can meditate for hours on hours every day, just because you can come to these amazing insights about your life within reality, doesn't mean you should, doesn't mean you're ready to do it. Because when we go too far, too fast within life, there are certain unintended consequences that come as a result. And that's not something you want to experience, especially with something that's supposed to be beneficial for you, like meditation. Look, you can do whatever you want. It's your life. I'm not here to prescribe anything. I'm just sharing my insights, my stories, and the results of going too far with meditation, because I've been there. But if you don't want to become a monk, if you don't want to become a mystic, and if you don't want to dedicate your entire life to meditation, there's no reason to spend any more than 30 or 45 minutes every single day, all right? You don't need to. You can still become more aware. You can still develop your focus and become more creative and develop a better communication line between your conscious and subconscious mind. You can do that without dedicating your entire life to it. And if you're just like an everyday person, then those are the most impactful things you will get from meditating. You don't need to go travel the cosmos. You don't need to come to these crazy realizations about reality, because in coming to those realizations, you might actually have a more difficult time engaging with reality itself. So, or I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I didn't have the mental power to do this and come back and function as I did before. Regardless, these are my thoughts. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you soon.